Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the second of our Global Futures Laboratory Fall 2020 Town Halls. Today we will be discussing operations and support. Please note that the Q&A functionality is again active for this session, so please submit any questions you might have using that. Our program will begin shortly. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the second installment of our fall series of town hall discussions in the Julie Ann Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. My name is Jessica Gibbons and I am thrilled to be introducing today's discussion that will focus on the operations aspect of GFL. A little bit about me. So I am the newest addition to the Global Futures team, and my role is to support our global partnerships and networks, including the United Nations, Conservation International, and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, among a mosaic of others. But before this role, I was a student at ASU, transplanted from Los Angeles in 2012 to join a university that truly embodied my personal mantra and ethos of protecting the future of our planet and those who live on it. I am proud to be a double ASU alumnus with my bachelor's in conservation biology and ecology from the life sciences and my master's in science and technology policy from our very own College of Global Futures School for the Future of Innovation in Society. In these programs, I learned about the ways both the future of people and our planet are not only inextricably linked, but the exact key to the solutions we desperately need for us to both thrive. I learned that no one department, institution, country, or coalition had all the knowledge or practice we needed if there was any hope for our collective future. We need creative, cooperative, and global solutions that can truly scale. And as the old adage goes, we know in the Global Futures Laboratory that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And with the honor of having one of the best jobs on earth, I am excited to contribute to the success of one of the largest and most innovative universities on the planet inside the country's first laboratory of its kind in shaping tomorrow today. We have an exciting town hall ahead of us to learn about GFL's operations and the ways our organizational structure, support systems, and staff can amplify our goals. And with that, I would now like to introduce Dr. Peter Schlosser, our Vice President and Vice Provost of the Global Futures Laboratory. Peter.
Thank you, Jessica. So what we will do today is to continue from what we have done last week, where we talked about the reason for the Global Futures Laboratory, the philosophy behind it, and the architecture in rough terms. So today we will talk a little bit more about how all that works, how we go from the philosophy, from the architecture, to really making it operating and operationally easy to understand, but also easily accessible. And I also, and I'm not sure, I don't see the background slides. Do we have them on and I just don't see them? Because I only, before handing over to Meredith Simpson, who is the Director of Operations, I wanted to, and here come the slides. So you all saw this before, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because what we really want to focus is how to make that architecture work. But just to recap very quickly for those who might not have seen it by any chance, if you look at that inner circle here, we do have, that's our framework, which is transforming the ultimate complex system, which is the Earth system, by innovation. We do that through 5 spaces, which is the discovery space, the learning space, solution space, networks, and engagement space. And in between these 2 circles, you see the areas of emphasis, the focal areas. Don't try to read all of them and pay attention to them at this point. We will have opportunity to talk about them in more detail. They also are being finalized. They are still a little bit in flux. And I also would like to introduce the leadership team, which is the next slide. So we have as directors of the Global Futures Laboratory, Gary Dirks as Senior Director, Amanda Ellis as Director of Global Partnerships, David Guston as Associate Vice Provost for Discovery, Engagement and Outcomes, Patty Ryder as Director of Strategic Initiatives, Christy Carter as Director of Development, and Meredith Simpson as Director of Operations. And talking about Meredith, she will now take us from this concept into a presentation on how we make all that work and how we support it. So I'm handing over to Meredith.
My video, there we go. Okay, great, thank you, Peter. It's good to have a chance to meet, and thank you all for joining today's town hall. Starting with the organizational chart, by design, Global Futures Lab is in service to both the knowledge enterprise and the academic enterprise. GFL is defined by 5 spaces: learning, solutions, discovery, networks, and engagement, with anchor institutes and activities within several of those spaces. The example would be the New College in the learning space, Walton Sustainability Solutions Service in the solution space, and GOC in the discovery space. So rather than create support systems for each space, operations are consolidated under the GFL banner. Under normal circumstances, it's a tall task to stand up a blended operations model. It was even more difficult with the COVID overlay, but I will say this new challenge also provided really an unexpected opportunity for a fresh perspective. On the next slide, using the discovery space as our example, the newly named Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation as anchor is intended to serve as the research hub for GFL. Note the GFL framework, the connection to the academic enterprise and knowledge enterprise, and also note the discovery space connection to the other spaces, which is so important, as Peter discussed earlier, in terms of how interconnected all of our efforts are. In addition to providing core services, Dave White and David Guston are in process of meeting with the centers and initiatives leads to identify research opportunities and synergies, and also opportunities for us to better align the support services that we're providing. As we build out our organization and processes, our org charts will continually be updated to reflect additions and new structures. On the next slide, I really wanted to step back for a moment and talk about the process that we use to develop the blended team that has been created to support the structure. To start, we looked at the existing staffing and job titles across the GFL landscape, including knowledge enterprise, the schools, the college, and GOC. We created teams based on like services and met via Zoom so all could share existing processes, best practices, gaps, and opportunities. And as I've said before, it's just absolutely remarkable, and I'm so excited at how well the teams and skill sets align. We collectively decided on how the teams would be formed, what systems, reporting structures, and backups look like. The process is flexible and still under design. There is so much more work ahead. But one of the outcomes we hope we can share with you are some resource guides and things of that nature to simplify accessing the different services that are available. Resource leads have been identified to provide points of contact for requests and inquiries. Nicole Grant for business operations, Jason Franz and Kayla Frost for communications and marketing, and Lauren Kuby for events. Our HR efforts are led right now by Yolanda Anderson and Kay Fitta. They can assist with your program needs and direct you to the appropriate resource. The structure is about service levels, not where a person sits in the overall organization. Note the blend of the College of Global Futures Laboratory, and Knowledge Enterprise staff. The intention is to leverage existing systems and staffing to coordinate across the GFL landscape. The same flow is across each of the spaces, although several of the larger programs like Walton Sustainability Solutions, the Sustainability Consortium, have more dedicated resources. As discussed at the College Town Hall, based on size and structure, the college commands a slightly different set of resources. Lori Heidecker will lead the business operations for the College of Global Futures. Cindy Dick for events, and Eliza Robinson supports Jason in terms of communications and marketing. In addition, the college and GFL teams also support each other in our efforts and activities. And most importantly, we would not have been able to create this structure without the expertise that is brought to the table by all of the teams, from SFIS, Complex Adaptive Systems, Knowledge Enterprise, SOS, GOC, and FactMan. It is truly, truly a blended family. I would say that perhaps not everyone is as excited about operations as perhaps I am, but everyone has to be excited by ISTD 7. The building is intended to inspire our work, tell a story about connecting the past to our global future. The first floor has a 400-seat presentation hall, Klaus Lackner's carbon capture lab, a footprint for a restaurant, an open atrium and historic canal, just to name a few. The Institute for Human Origins will occupy the second floor, and Global Future Laboratory will occupy floors 3 through 5. There are so many collaborators who will reside in ISTD 7, it's difficult to name them all, but just to name a few to give you a sense. Kaiteki, the Walton Sustainability Solutions Service, the Sustainability Consortium, College of Global Futures Leadership, the School of Sustainability, Kerr, and the Sweetie Center for Sustainable Food Systems. ISTD 7 is the articulation of GFL. It provides classrooms, conference rooms, open informal networking spaces, lab and office space with the intention of providing opportunities for collaboration and engagement. The lab space build-outs are underway. Knowledge Enterprise Research Space Planning Team is working with the PIs on the lab side. The lab side, if you look at the slide, note it's on the university side of the diagram. The office and team spaces are in the furniture design phase, and those are kind of that lower section on the bottom of the plan. Offices are in the middle on each floor with glass fronts to allow for maximum light, and the workstations are along the exterior walls. The Atrium and eLab committee has been formed to imagine what the atrium space will look like in support of speaking to our purpose. And labs include, but just to name a few, labs for PIs Dan Childers, Nancy Grimm, Jenny Van Oss, the Global Discovery and Conservation Science Lab, Klaus Lackner's Center for Negative Carbon Emissions, Lightworks, Future Water, the Wet Center, and there is a humanities lab as well. We're now turning our attention to moving SFIS to Wrigley Hall. For GFL to be successful, it will take many to support our trajectory, and I see a strong foundation in our operations team and look forward to being of service. My door is open. Please don't hesitate to reach out with questions, comments, and ideas, and I look forward to your questions as we move forward in the program. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our next presenter, who is David Gustin, who among his many roles serves as the AVP, Discovery, Engagement, and Outcomes. Dave?
Thank you so much, Meredith, and that was really helpful to me too. So you've heard my role described twice already by Peter and by Meredith as Associate Vice Provost for Discovery, Engagement, and Outcomes. And as we go through, you'll hear a little bit about my thinking of in each of those spaces. And I really want to communicate to you that, that I am more than open to discussions in any of those areas about how these things, as Peter and Meredith have suggested already, are going to evolve and play out over this formative period of the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. What you see in this slide right now is a different kind of map of what it is that GFL does, focused on the discovery space in sort of more of a natural history approach than a structural or conceptual approach. And you'll see on the vertical axis a span of space between individualized efforts and organized efforts, and on the horizontal axis between core and periphery. And don't take those words in a too loaded fashion. There are certain people who sort of need to be with GFL and certain people who might decide to affiliate with GFL, and you can think of it also as sort of necessary and voluntary. But going up along the vertical from the origin in that core area are a set of individual independent faculty, staff, and students that exist within the traditionally defined learning space of the College of Global Futures, but many of these people also have important ambitions in the discovery space. Moving up the levels of organization, Peter mentioned the focal areas are areas in which the mission of GFL finds important manifestation that need to be organized, created into sandboxes and small groups and larger groups that can connect with almost any part of the larger Global Futures Lab ecology. And you see those replicated in the different lighter yellow circles around the field space. Some of the focal area groups might be very closely affiliated with research centers within GOC, and I'll mention those in a second. Some of them might be more closely affiliated with some of the individual scholars and their agendas, with other informal research initiatives and programs across the university, and even have robust connections to the broader community associated with global futures nationally and globally. And then as we reach the highest level of organized efforts, GOC, the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation, brings together the most coherent set of larger scale efforts. The provost approved research centers, formally organized initiatives and programs into an entity that we hope will be very collaborative, very mission driven, and very interactive with a set of these other activities. As you move off to the right from the core out to the rest of the university, GFL manifests itself in a variety of ways through a set of what might be considered as allied centers, those that are not hierarchically organized in the context of GOC, but those outside, perhaps in biodesign, in the schools of engineering and elsewhere, that we collaborate with on a regular basis, where we're co-PIs on their proposals, they're co-PIs on our proposals. We share interests, we occasionally share personnel, we share approaches, but they're not deeply organized in the GOC model. There are a set of other research initiatives and programs that are very much like that. And then there's the next manifestation, I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, of the soon to be former sustainability scientists and scholars, who are really numerically the largest number of folks involved with the Global Futures Laboratory, who penetrate all parts of the university, all campuses, potentially all academic units across the university, and who give the sort of individualized life to the discovery agenda of GFL. Then still further to the right are people outside the university, networks outside the university, centers outside the university that we will be connecting with and incorporating into the work that we do. So this is how I conceive of the, if you will, again, the field space of GFL and the beginnings of the way that those different areas, those different groups will interact together to create what I hope will be, and I think what we all hope will be, a robust ecology of interdisciplinary discovery. Can I have the next slide, please? So as Meredith mentioned, we're going to take a slightly deeper dive into operations and how a variety of services are delivered. One of our priorities within this discovery field space in particular is to provide top-notch research services across GFL, including not just to the organized centers within GOC, the less formalized organized focal groups, but also to the individual researchers within the College of Global Futures and the individual researchers who are part of the scholars and scientists community. And to this end, we are therefore organizing this Global Futures Office of Research Services, a next stage in what had already been developed. Nice acronym there, GFORCE, as I think we will want to pronounce it, to provide this full set of research services, including research advancement, research development, research communication, research business operations, and perhaps in Q&A we can get to a little bit more detail, if you're unfamiliar with those terms, about what precisely is incorporated in each of those areas. But it will represent, again, as Meredith described, the sort of blended model where we're not so concerned with the precise unit or administrative entity in which the people providing these services sit, but we're interested in organizing those services for the outcomes in the direction of the mission and the way that you, the members of GFL, interact with them. In particular, I want to highlight the research development circle here, where there will be a high-touch research development activity oriented toward individualized faculty members that Ira Bennett will be leading. And this will be one of, I think, the most dynamic areas already under GEOS. There was a research accelerator that was developed there under Dave White's leadership and with Anne-Marie Hess. And there'll be more different kinds of close touch to individual faculty members who are looking to develop their research activities in the context of the Global Futures Lab. As a warning, a prompt, a beginning socialization for you all, one of the ways that one will gain access to these research services will be through a proposal intake form, and that will trigger our understanding of the kinds of services that you might need access to in your quest for sponsored research. I also want to briefly describe a couple of other priorities that we have. A second important one being, as I alluded to, the transformation from the former Global Institute of Sustainability and the former Institute for the Future of Innovation and Society into the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation, integrating the centers, programs, and initiatives formerly associated with those two separate entities into a single institute that is strongly mission-driven and collaborative and oriented toward achieving some, crucial research goals and at scale. Another important thing besides that sort of integration of the center's programs and initiatives within GOC is their connection to, in particular, the learning space represented in part by the College of Global Futures to help make research skills an important differentiator for our students by providing research opportunities for students at all levels and important contributions to curricular offerings. The idea being that GOC as a keystone element in the discovery space is not separated from the College of Global Futures, the keystone element in the learning space, but making important steps to self-consciously orient discovery and learning in a shared fashion. To this end, in developing this new vision for GOC, we've begun an internal self-study and review of this set of centers and programs and initiatives. So Dave White and I are leading a team along with Ira Bennett and Melanie Gall from the Watts College, and the center directors are at least initially familiar with the approach that we're taking, and more about that will be unfolding over the next several weeks and into the spring semester. A third priority, again, as I alluded to previously, is beginning to realign the sustainability scientists, scholars, and fellows into the new organization. And already we've expanded the roles of those individuals to include scholars who are formerly associated with the Institute for the Future of Innovation Society, now together with the former sustainability scientists and scholars, a group nearly 600 strong. And you'll be hearing from us soon about what we hope to do with this group. But more importantly, we want to hear from you about your ideas in creating, again, a robust ecology of interdisciplinary work among this very widespread across the university, very powerful intellectual group. Fourth, we want to be able to advance the work of the focal areas, as Peter described, filling in that sort of central space in the mandala that describes GFL, and particularly to the College of Global Futures. And to this end, you will be hearing soon about a seed grant program that we are planning that will do exactly this, that will connect the focal areas in particular to the discovery agenda within the College of Global Futures. Fifth priority, and finally, to think about the interactions among the 5 spaces of GFL that you see around the outside of this mandala. That is, in my vision, where the the long string of nouns that is part of my title that covers a couple of these entities. The vision here is that discovery, learning, solutions, engagement networks are not separate entities. We would not be doing ourselves a service. We would not be doing you a service. We would not be doing the world a service to the extent that we want to be of service to the planet by replicating traditional structures where learning and discovery and engagement are separate silos, and things like networks, that is connections to the external world, and solutions, that is really driving home the idea of use-inspired research and so on, are separate. And so I take as part of my mission the important role of connecting these entities to each other and making sure that we don't have unnecessary barriers and separations between what happens in these spaces, and making sure that we can get synergies out of them. That's where I'll stop, and I'll take questions happily when we get to the question period. And now I need to pass it on to Kathleen for a special announcement that she has for the group.
Sure, thanks so much. So I'm going to start with a confession. I've never watched so much television as I have in the last few days. And if you know me, you know I'm pretty addicted to politics. And right now I'm extremely stressed by the large divide we find our country in, those red parts of the map and the blue parts of the map. And I wonder, do we agree on anything? Well, maybe. I was very interested in CNN's exit polls on the day of election. They asked voters, what's the most important issue to you? 35% said the economy, 20% racial inequality, 17% coronavirus, and 11% healthcare policy. Now, with the economic collapse of our economy due to COVID-19, at first I was surprised that racial inequality topped the pandemic. But then again, I shouldn't be, given what I teach. I mean, racism really is a global health issue. Disparities in healthcare, along with everything else in society, cause BIPOC communities, and that's the acronym, if you haven't heard it, for Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC communities to be most vulnerable to the coronavirus. So it's all one ball of wax in a way. CNN went further and they asked another question as people exited the polls. They said, racism in the US is, and then you had 4 choices. The most important problem, 20% said that. An important problem, 51%. A minor problem, 17%. 9%, not a problem at all. You got to wonder what planet they're living on. But anyhow, we may be a country that right now is extremely politically divided, but 71% of those people polled upon exiting indicated that racism is a problem that needs to be confronted and solved. What a year it's been, right? A year of painful reckoning of the systemic and structural racism and inequalities that our society faces. Let me say for a minute, why did I come to ASU? I work in agriculture. In the US context, let's face it, that's a male-dominated sport. Hey, it's a white male-dominated sport. Time and time again over my career, I found myself as the only woman in the room, a room with no BIPOC representation, and in a field of egregious discrimination, from land robbing from Native Americans and Black farmers to more recently, Black farmers being sold inferior seed at the beginning of the cropping season. I could go on and on because the list is long and appalling. I realized at some point in my career that all the research in the world wasn't going to change things when it came to our food system. What would create change? Making sure that the faces around the decision-making table reflected the true demographics of this country. I came to ASU because Michael Crow said, there's nothing to be proud of being an exclusive institution. That ASU's goal is to be as inclusive as possible, to open our doors wide, and then to measure our success based on the success of those who weren't primed to succeed. Our aspirations are good. Now we need to operationalize. This is the operational town hall. So I want to say we're going to operationalize. I'm here to announce that the next GFL town hall will be on JEDI. Now, that may be another acronym you're not familiar with. I remember a staff person seeing that on my calendar and thinking I was a big Star Wars fan. So, but do know what this acronym is. That means justice, equity, diversion, and inclusion, JEDI. So in last week's town hall, Michael Crow said that GFL is to be a new approach to knowledge creation, a broadly scoped intellectual entity. My question is this: how do we from the start ensure that justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion are core building blocks of this new effort? There's no more important question before us. Answering this question will be key to GFL success, and we need your help. So that is why I am here today to invite you to the next town hall, which will be November 19th at 11 a.m. We will be talking about JEDI issues. We need your brilliant thoughts. We need your creative minds. We need your input. I look forward to seeing you then. And now I'd like to turn the program over to one of my favorite all-time professors at the School of Sustainability, Rimjim Agarwal, who will lead our Q&A.
Thank you, Kathleen. It is my great pleasure to be your moderator for this Q&A session. We received a number of questions beforehand, and there are several that are streaming now. I will try my best to be able to ask those questions within the limited time we have. So we'll start with a question we received, and that may go to you, David Guston. This is from Light Millennium, and this person wants to know, how do you define Global Futures Fellows for non-ASU faculty? What are the requirements to be involved under this category? So I guess this is about how we involve non-ASU faculty within GF.
So that's something that I don't have the best grasp on at the moment. I know that there have been non-ASU faculty affiliated in the fellows level previously with GEOS, and that there are going to be some jiggering into the changes of the fellows terminology for non-ASU faculty. Maybe actually Peter, I think, may have a better understanding of the nuance of that category than I do at this point. Or Dave may.
Thanks, David. You know, the way we actually will separate inside versus outside is that designation of fellow is for the outside collaborators and partners, and scientists and scholars for the inside.
Okay, thank you both. So our next question is for Meredith. Meredith, can you please say a few words about faculty office space? It seems there are rumors swirling around that those offices will be windowless. Meredith?
Meredith is muted.
Sorry. ISTV 7 has a tremendous amount of light from the atrium side of the building, but then also from the outside of the building. And so it's a little different approach in terms of the office space and the workstations. The workstations will be along kind of the outer area aligned with the building, the sides of the building and the sides of the atrium, and the offices are in the middle of the corridor. All of the offices will have a glass front to them. And so it will ensure a tremendous amount of light goes through into the offices. I think we'll also have some options in terms of potentially frosting some of the glass and things of that nature for privacy, but absolutely the building will have plenty of light, and all of the offices will as well.
That's great to hear. Yeah, we need all the light. So there is another question for you, Meredith, so hold on. So this question is, with our increasing student populations in the college, what new resources and support will you offer to student services staff?
Well, I think within the college, the student services staff is going through a process in terms of looking at, based on our goals to have 5,000 students, tomorrow, is looking at what the staffing needs are, and those will be evaluated with the other staff needs. The blended model, the student staff for the School for Sustainability will be located in ISTV 7. There will also be some staff at Wrigley Hall. And so all of the staff needs will be evaluated as the college is growing.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. There are a set of questions again for David Guston maybe, or Dave White. This question is from Candace, and she's asking, will there be a speaker series that draws primarily from within GFL or CGF to facilitate faculty getting to know one another's work? SOURCE has something like this. Does SFIS have something like this? Could this be combined and scaled up?
So that's a great idea and a great example of the kinds of ideas that we want to bubble up from across GFL. The seed grant program that I mentioned has the possibility of supporting similar such things as well. And so I think we need to be in a period of collecting these kinds of ideas and understanding, quite frankly, what density of interactions we actually need. I know that my experience in SFIS, we ended up getting past, I think, what was a reasonable density of interactions in terms of events and so forth. And some of that is moderated by the capacity of the event staff. Some of it is moderated by our bandwidth. Some of it in this world is moderated by our ability to look at each other in Hollywood Square Zoom land. But we absolutely do need an intellectual exchange, a medium of intellectual exchange that encompasses the full breadth of GFL.
And if I could just add one thing to that. So as a part of the event structure, one of the things that we've been looking at is the types of events that are occurring at all different levels of the organization, whether they're at the college level or at the Global Futures Lab level or the individual school, whether they're student facing or faculty facing. And so we're collecting all of those types of events. And our plan is to work with leadership to identify really what the priorities are associated with those events, to ensure that we're not, over Zooming people or creating too many events, but have a good cadence in terms of the timing for events and also highlight faculty work, certainly.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. And while you are on, there is another question for you from Dan Childers. Why is information/data management not part of the research services sector?
Well, one of the things I would say in terms of the positive reasons for our close association with the Knowledge Enterprise team is that they create a tremendous bandwidth for us in terms of services and structures that we would not be able to afford perhaps on our own. And so within the Knowledge Enterprise team, within the web team and informatics team, there is a very strong presence in terms of database and the report structures to support research activities for different faculty members. And so certainly, perhaps it was not mentioned, but there is a strong interest in terms of continuing that.
Meredith, perhaps I could add Rim-Jim to that briefly. And just to note, Dan, that in our blended services model, which includes our close partnerships with Knowledge Enterprise, we of course partner with the Research Technology Office and with Phil Tarrant and his team and others. And so we will be taking advantage of the capacity that is developed within Knowledge Enterprise to provide those information data services to the centers within GOC as well as the broader GFL community. And so while it was not explicitly called out on the GForce operations slide that David mentioned, we're certainly well aware that the data and information technology aspects of research services are an important part of the ecosystem that we plan to support and provide.
Yeah, that sounds very helpful. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, Dave, for jumping on this one. So our next question is maybe for Peter or for David. Last Friday in the town hall, there was a mention of humanities and arts as part of GFL. But today I did not see any graph that explicitly includes them. So the questionnaire is asking, could you please talk about how, when, and where in the process you see these collaborations?
I just start and then hand over to David. In my view, the humanities and arts, as expressed last Friday, are at the core of what the mission is, which is, how we have to understand how people make choices that got us to where we are right now, and how they might make different choices to get the planet back on track. So in my view, they are included in all the activities that we are doing. They are included in all the spaces that we have. And for example, in learning space, besides having active participation in the college, also the learning space has direct connections to other schools. And so there is a direct access to that. And on the research side, there is also provision in G-Force to support them. But for that, I will hand over to David to explain how this will work.
Yeah, so thank you, Peter. So the arts and humanities are represented in a variety of ways. As Peter said, in some cases they're embedded in the direct things that we do. As I understand it, and Meredith, I'm pretty sure this is the case, that the Humanities Lab is going to have a nice spot in ISTB 7. And the Humanities Lab, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is an effort mostly on the learning side, but also on the research side, that brings together faculty from different disciplines to train students in specific areas in a sort of problem-oriented fashion, directed toward outputs and outcomes in the world that are moderated by more humanistic and artistic outputs. So the output from the work could be a video or a mural or some other kind of practical humanistic and artistic output, where we in the social sciences might be producing a report for a government agency, or somebody might be producing an innovation space, somebody might be producing a prototype. A prototype object or something along those lines. So Humanities Lab will operate in that mode, very closely associated even at the core of GFL and its physical space. That kind of interaction.
There actually is quite a large space that is being built out for the Humanities Lab. And even in a conversation yesterday, we're looking in terms of what does that look like? We want to create a very open, flexible space that can be used by students in terms of different projects that will also be used for performances perhaps and displays as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Stephen, please go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of engagement, it strikes me that it's very much about storytelling. It's very much about the ways in which we engage with the larger world, but also the way that the larger world and the voices around the world are able to communicate with us. And so, that's very much a question of arts and humanities being able to help us to sort of think through the ways in which we can tell the most sort of compelling stories that actually will have the potential to communicate what work we're doing, but the work that others are doing. And I might just mention, I'm teaching now a humanities lab, and it's called Shaping Climate Narratives, and it's actually working with somebody who's a theater director within HIDA now, and it's really actually with the intention of producing a performance piece coming out of that. So I think we're looking for opportunities really wherever we can to pull in as many people from the arts and humanities to sort of help us do what we're all trying to do.
So let me emphasize and punctuate Stephen's contribution there, that his work in narrative storytelling is part of a larger set of media enterprises that the university has organized under the leadership of Mia Parrish over in the Cronkite School, but includes activities like Stephen's work that are deeply embedded already in the College of Global Futures and the Global Futures Laboratory. And these include the partnership that ASU has with Leonardo, which is the world's leading art science journal, a peer-reviewed journal of art and science collaboration. It includes the relationship with Slate in future tense. It includes the relationship with Zocalo, as well as KAT television. I think I'm missing one in the register there, but Stephen can fill it in if I am missing it.
All the sort of enterprises of a Cronkite School.
Yeah, and so those will, in the 5-space diagram, most of those will sort of reside in the engagement space, but there are also a host of other entities that draw on humanistic and artistic expression and methods that will exist in the context of engagement, that will also exist in the context of networks and the other spaces as well.
Okay, thank you all. That sounds very promising. And we are all looking forward to seeing all these things incorporated. So thank you for providing all these details. So our next question perhaps could be taken up by Amanda Ellis or Patty, that I also see in the panel. So this question is from Joni Adamson, and she was wondering if either of you could speak briefly about the work in global networking that is being developed in GFL.
Why don't I let Patty speak first to the networks, and I'll add a little on our global partnerships.
Great. Thank you for that question, Joni, and thank you, Amanda. So my portfolio of networks has been primarily formal organizations that we're a part of. And as everyone knows, we are a joiner. So I did an analysis of some of the organizations that we are a part of, and where there were about 140 universities in that set of institutions. There were only 2 others that were in more than one, and we're in all 14 of them. So that shows you that we have a vital international network, some of which we lead. And as Peter will tell you, the Earth League is one of our primary thought leadership entities that we are the secretariat for. Likewise, the New Carbon Economy Consortium, we have sort of a secretariat of secretariats role in some leadership position in the particular organizations, such as the University Climate Change Coalition and the International University Alliance for Climate. And so those are some of the institutions that we're engaged with very robustly. And it's a slightly different than the partnerships that Amanda has, but very complementary. And so I'll hand it to Amanda now.
Thank you so much, Patty, and thank you, Joni, and thank you for the amazing work you do, Joni. It's, as you know, I just think it's brilliant. So just to give an example, perhaps, of how networks parlay into global partnerships, Peter and Johan Rockstrom, as co-chairs of the Earth League, have been very involved in influencing some of our big picture strategy. So for example, in speaking to ESG competent boards, where Paul Pullman and a number of other very senior international business figures are really looking to climate scientists to help them figure out what are the material interests for business. And as a result of that success, we've been invited to do a lot more work where we'll be looking to engage particularly the humanities, but across the whole GFL transdisciplinary space, to think about how it is that we can help in partnership educate companies around really what needs to happen. And for me, the inspiration around GFL in shaping tomorrow today means that we need to be an influencer of influencers. And so the other big area that we're working in, and thank you to everyone who's been engaged in the SDG 5 on gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls initiative. So you may know that that partnership, which internally is a cross ASU group led out of GFL, has been working with the Interparliamentary Union, the World Bank, the United Nations, and all the other parliamentary and governance bodies, including the Council of Women World Leaders. And together we have collaboratively designed a series of short video trainings, which are now being taken up to train parliamentarians in 179 countries. So that kind of impact is what we are able to do as GFL, and bringing our internal resources, collecting those with other international partners. And as a result of that, we've now been asked to do SDG 13 on climate, which is going to be a huge project. But of course, in the run up to COP26, that allows us to really have an impact. And if we're able to align that influence on policymakers with the influence on the private sector, who I think are a way ahead in terms of the kind of settings that they have, then we can hopefully go through all of the SDGs, and GFL can become the hub to really proactively shape tomorrow today.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. It's always so inspiring to hear from you, Amanda and Patty. So thank you so much for that. There is a follow-up question, perhaps Peter or either of you could answer. This is from Nalini Chetri, and she's asking, we've heard a lot of interesting ideas for advancing the larger vision of GFL. I would appreciate if one of you could talk about global development in relationship to this new architecture of GFL, GFC, GISI. You've partly answered that, but any other remaining thoughts, Peter, Amanda, Patty?
I mean, just to start it, and I hope some others will come in. It is of course recognized as one of the most important activities that have to be taken up, where academia has to engage, but it cannot be just within academia. For this particularly, we have to collaborate with partners from many sectors, and Amanda, of course, already got into that space, and we will continue to look for opportunities to enter that particular area and see how we can mobilize the expertise, the interest within the lab to enhance that space out of an academic perspective. But again, this has to be done in a very close collaboration with outside partners.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So our next question is from Mauricio Meja, and it's probably for David Guston or Dave White. He asks, if I am an affiliated scholar and want to propose an external project, why should I use the intake form from GFL Research Office instead of my college research office? Or should I use both?
That's a good question. Thanks, Mauricio, and perhaps I'll take a first cut at it. What I would suggest is that GFL, as a pan-university initiative, we are cooperating with the research advancement and research development teams across every college and school in the university. Now, we in particular are focused on initiatives that require complex, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary teams. And so there are instances where an affiliate or a faculty member may choose to use their own college or school research advancement services and submit a conventional proposal, and that activity we expect will continue apace across the university. What we are focused on are those opportunities that require complex sets of interactions among interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary teams that require scale and involve implementing partners, and so that's our specialization, and we really hope to provide that connective tissue to facilitate and enhance those types of collaborations, not only through the development and support of specific proposals for external funding, but through a variety of our other activities, such as our faculty research development through the existing Research Accelerator program, as well as new initiatives that will be developed through Ira Bennett, Anne-Marie Hess, and others on the G-Force team. So come to us with those exciting, complex, challenging, transdisciplinary, sustainability-oriented proposals that need to scale to have global impact. That's where we want to be positioned.
And just to supplement that, Dave, that was a great answer. Other parts of the answer are that you may be from a unit that is fully capable of supporting your research ambitions. You may not be from a unit that's fully capable of supporting your research ambitions. And GFL wants to be able to support you regardless of the built-in capacity at your home unit. So there are parts of ASU that are not robust in terms of their local ability to support research. So we are another option for such people who fit into the intellectual space and the intellectual mission of GFL. A second reason is, beyond the capacity to support research is the capacity to link up to the engagement, the networks and the solution space. And this is very much related to what Dave said, but I just want to put a slightly different twist on it. The sooner you can give us an idea that you're doing something that's of interest, the more easily we're going to be able to help you connect to opportunities that you might not have thought of across the capacities of GFL.
Thank you, Dave and David. This sounds very encouraging. And now as we draw close to the end of our time, I'd like to take a final question that sort of rounds up this whole session, and I invite anyone of the panelists to respond to it. So the question is, as staff and students, what opportunities do you offer for us to help inform how we build this enterprise together? So it's open to anyone who would like to take this up, of how we build this enterprise together.
I'll pop in just very quickly and talk about the cross ASU, GFL and Thunderbird managed United Nations SDG task force. And we've been thrilled to have fantastic engagement from students and also from a range of experts around the university. So I think Peter's vision for that is not only how do we contribute to the SDGs now, and we're seeing a wonderful website which was built by Michelle and Jessica to highlight some of that work given our Times Higher Education rankings. And of course, this directly allows everybody to contribute to the global agenda. But what's beyond the SDGs? And we've already started to look at what are the gaps. So for example, in gender equality, one of the problems is that we look at property rights under current national laws, and they're totally discriminatory. So how is it that we at GFL and at ASU can really contribute to shaping the agenda, the global agenda beyond 2030, and for everybody in their area of expertise to look at the indicators and targets and think about, right, how do we get in there and influence? And there is an opportunity that Jess can include everybody in to this, to contribute to the 75th anniversary of the UN and beyond. So we would love to have everybody engage and your views on that. And Jess will be ensuring that whoever would like to participate in creating the global agenda can engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for that great example. Peter, would you like to add?
Yeah, let me just make a quick comment on that and use the focal areas as one way how people can engage. We have presently 13 focal areas, and because humanities came up so prominently in the discussion, there is one on human sciences that is led by Joni and others. So, you know, we are actually preparing a website that makes this area of the focal leads and the subjects much more obvious, much more transparent, much more accessible. So I would encourage everybody to engage with the leads of the focal areas and talk to them about your ideas and how you can, bring them into these activities and through the focal areas, then throughout the activities, the set of activities within the laboratory.
Thank you, Peter. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this Q&A session? Any of the panelists?
Yeah, I have one last thought, which is that it's global futures, so it's global in its scale, and it's also not a singular future, but multiple futures, and so by its nature, by its name, it seeks to be inclusive of many voices, and so as much input as we can have from whatever sources, be it students or faculty or staff inside and those outside the university, that's actually what's going to allow us to be successful in our mission.
Great. That seems to be a high note to end on. Thank you, Stephen. And thanks to all our panelists for responding to those questions and all our audience who sent these questions. We hope this was useful. So I hand it over back to Jason now.
Thank you very much, Rim Jim, and thank you again to all of our participants and our audience and everybody who had submitted questions. We will be again holding our third town hall November 19th at 11 a.m. Look for the invitation and links for that to get registered early next week. And we will also be working on the recording of this session and last Friday's session, getting that up on a platform for everybody to review, either to go back and catch what was said or to, if in case you missed one of these, you will be able to see it that way. Otherwise, everybody enjoy a wonderful weekend, and thank you again for joining us. Take care.